I'm Michael James, hosting this morning's edition of Live from the Heartland, and I'm here with my friend Thom Clark from the Community Media Workshop, and we are talking right now about the Olympics and beyond. Well, let's move it a little bit toward what this means for the mayor. You, at the beginning of the show, Thom, you talked about this is probably the first election the mayor ever lost, although he did lose a primary way back to Jane Byrne, as I recall. And he had a lot invested in this. He's had a lot of other falls, so to speak, lately. I'm not blaming him on the Olympics at all. I mean, that's just what it is. But on some other issues, his choices for funding the city in dire times by selling off, well, basically public works, public property, and including the parking situation. What's your take on where the mayor's at? Is he perhaps vulnerable? There are people emerging in any other communities or any communities that might decide to challenge him in the next time around?
Well, I could be flip and suggest that by sustaining this or in getting this political body blow, I'm not sure why the guy would want to stay in office, and I wouldn't be surprised if not only does he not run again, but perhaps decides to leave early. Now, I think the reason why that won't happen is there's no heir apparent. There literally is not, whether you're talking about left, right, center, business community, progressive community, whatever. We don't have a candidate. We don't have someone who could take over the reins of power on the fifth floor, nor do we have a coalition in the city council or in the streets that would be a ready heir apparent to the current regime. So very interesting couple years we have in front of us.
It is.
Shorter term, I would hate to be a worker at City Hall Monday morning when this guy comes back from Copenhagen. It's not going to be a pretty place to work the next few months as the mayor copes with a huge growing deficit, a real inability to do much about it except for more layoffs and more budget cuts. You can't raise taxes much more in this kind of environment, and for the most part, you're trying to raise property taxes on top of a depressed housing market, property tax base that just is flattened out, if not going down, much less up. So this mayor has a whole lot of challenges facing him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he decides to take an early retirement.
Well, that would be a scoop. I haven't heard that one yet. I basically, what the mainstream media was talking about last night was, yeah, this hurts him a little bit, but it's not that quite big a deal. You know, there were people who we thought might emerge, and you know, I guess I would say as much as I've respected Mayor Daley when he challenged you know, a Republican legislature and made a deal with the Gary Airport for a while. That's about the best thing I thought he had done. You know, I was wondering about people like Miguel de Valle, and who seems to have positioned himself well. Jesse Jackson Jr. was certainly in the mix until the Senate stuff came down, and that's sort of too bad. It's true, there are not really too many people that come to mind who you think might challenge him.
I think we might have a clearer picture after we see what happens with the Cook County president's race and the U.S. Senate race to replace Barack Obama's seat. It'll become a little bit clearer about where the power circles play out at that point. I would throw into the mix people like Chuy Garcia, who's kind of a free agent again, because he's moved on from Little Village Community Development Corporation, now in Lacey. Cheryl Jackson is a very interesting new face in the scene at the Urban League. She's running for the Senate seat. On the other hand, like Jesse Jackson Jr., she's sort of politically neutralized at this point because of the Blagojevich connection. I think it's really uncertain what's going to happen in either one of those races. Todd Stroger, behind the scenes, has been making all sorts of play to get support, and he may still win out, believe it or not, in that race, and then we'll be kind of at a stalemate. So, you know, going back to the mayor, just for the record, the last election he lost was actually, if you recall, to Harold Washington.
Oh, right. And that was the greatest loss ever.
And ever since then, he's pretty much gotten his way. And that's really what I'm looking back on now is He's not used to this. This is not the kind of family he grew up in terms of their political success over the years. He has had a master touch of getting by or really overwhelming his opposition and understanding how, learning at the knee of his dad, how to neutralize your political enemies. And he's really been a master at that, but he couldn't do it on the international stage. And perhaps as gracious as he was yesterday, you know, maybe he kind of knew what he was up against and put on a good show and came up short.
You know, in talking about possible candidates for mayor, you mentioned another one, Chuy Garcia, and I would also mention David Orr.
Yes.
And actually, I've been trying to encourage David to think about it because I think, you know, certainly in a transition, he's someone who is respected, and it would be interesting. And Chuy, for people who don't know, was a state senator. He certainly is a progressive. He was a victim of Mayor Daley and the Hispanic Democratic Organization, which later ended up convicting in court those folks. But Chuy was the guy who paid the price by being knocked out by some nefarious activity.
Yes.